Welcome back. Let's turn our attention to the campaign map because the chance of Democrats taking back control of the Senate appears to be increasing. The Cook Political Report is shifting 4 key Senate races in Democrats' favor. Specifically, North Carolina and Georgia move from the toss-up column to lean Democrat. Ohio shifts from lean Republican to toss-up. And Nebraska slides from solid Republican to likely Republican. All shifts that work in Democrats' favor. The publication reports, quote, right now we see the likeliest outcome is a 1 to 3 seat Democratic pickup, still just out of reach of the 4 seats the party needs to reclaim the majority. It's a conversation that it's actually shocking for us to be having, given the way that the year began. Joining us now, the author of that piece, the Senate and governor's editor for the Cook Political Report, Jessica Taylor. Jessica, you live and breathe these races, and so I think it's just so striking to see the ways that we are looking at a Georgia seat, for example. We'll focus on Ossoff for a second, that you're now saying is likely Democrat, when I was having conversations 2 years ago, and I know you were too, about how Ossoff was the most vulnerable Democrat on the map. So what has changed in these 4 races?
It's really President Trump and his sagging approval ratings and the overall environment for Republicans that is dragging down Republican challengers there in Georgia. There's still a messy primary happening. Republicans that I talk to don't feel great about their chances in that race. You have Ossoff that continues to just stockpile money. One Republican I talked to estimated that Ossoff could have $50 million in the bank by the fall. So he's been able to sort of look ahead to the general election while there's still a very complicated primary. It looks like Congressman Mike Collins is probably the front runner in that race, but it's more likely than not going to a June runoff. So the longer that they don't have a specific challenger, Ossoff is just sort of not on a glide path. I mean, he's still the most vulnerable Democratic incumbent, but that's because some of the other seats that Democrats are defending are open seats like New Hampshire and Michigan.
Yeah, and those are interesting races on their face for other reasons. But I'm fascinated, even when you look at a place like Ohio, the fact that, and Schumer would say that this is a story of good recruitment because he's got Sherrod Brown back in that race trying to come back to the Senate. But what do you see in a state like that I think many of us look at as pretty solidly red?
I mean, in a midterm environment, these seats can perform differently if Trump does not get his voters out. And we see in these special elections that have happened across the country that they are not coming out. And when you look at sort of the state of things, particularly with a very unpopular war in Iran right now that just continues to be muddled and no end in sight as of right now with, the tenuous ceasefire. And no deal to be had this weekend. I think that Sherrod Brown here functions almost more as the incumbent. He has some strength now. He lost last time, and there are plenty of attacks that Republicans will use against him. But last week, the Senate Leadership Fund, the Senate's leadership's main Republican super PAC, they made their ad reservations for the fall. The most money that they were putting down was in Ohio, $79 million. So that tells you that they are very worried about this seat, and that matches the reporting that we have in this piece.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a fascinating race, especially given Brown is someone who, in presidential years when he's faced re-election, always outperformed whoever the Democrat was on the ticket. In this past election cycle, even that outperformance wasn't enough to bridge the gap. All of these races fascinating, and yet I think the bottom line for viewers who are like, are Democrats going to take the Senate? That still doesn't seem likely, and I wonder if you can sort of reality check it for us a little bit.
Yeah, because they have to get 4 seats. Really, they have to pitch a perfect game. They need other seats to come on board into the toss-up column that are just not there yet. Alaska is the seat that we have left in the lean Republican column. I mean, that one's still competitive. We do have Republicans that have already reserved money there. It's a much cheaper state. You have Mary Peltola, who also has a history of overperforming the top of the ticket, running against Dan Sullivan. But Sullivan has been through 2 tough races. I think that he's not going to be as easy to beat as perhaps a John Husted in Ohio, who is an appointed senator and not as well known. So, again, they have to do everything right. And then, Democrats are still playing defense in places like we talked about. There's that messy Michigan primary that's not going to get resolved until August. So the bottom line is Republicans are still favored to keep the Senate. But I think that we increasingly see that Democrats are making gains. The likeliest flip is North Carolina that we have shifted. That's a Republican-held seat, so that's where we get to at least between 1 and 3. Maine still has a very messy primary. Listen, I think Maine is sort of the crux of all of it, because if you can't flip a seat that Kamala Harris carried, that Republicans haven't carried in a long time. Susan Collins is she's been through tough races before, but if it's increasingly looking like it's going to be Graham Plattner, who has a lot of oppo that Republicans are eager to use against him. This is, I think, a failure for Chuck Schumer. He got Janet Mills into the race. She has not performed up to expectations, really. And so they could be caught with a very problematic nominee. And that could really, Maine has to factor into those 4 seats as well.
Yeah, Susan Collins has proved extremely resilient in past cycles. And as much as Schumer would like to tout Mary Peltola and Sherrod Brown and Cooper in North Carolina, those are recruitment wins. At the same time, Michigan and Maine, you're right to point out, are messy primaries where I don't know if that's the same story for Democrats. I could talk about this for an entire hour. Jessica Taylor, you have to come back.
So thanks
the Cook
for having
Political
me.
Report, with their ratings changing, that latest piece available to read online right now. You're going to want to see it. It sets the stage for 2026.